Salut tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien. Aujourd'hui, j'ai décidé de faire une vidéo de français parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'entre vous abonnés à ma chaîne qui apprennent le français et je pense que la lecture va vous permettre d'apprendre plus de vocabulaire et aussi améliorer votre grammaire et tout et tout. Donc normalement, je publie des vidéos de moi en train de lire en italien parce que je suis en train d'apprendre l'italien en ce moment, mais j'ai décidé de vous aider en français et de lire avec vous un de mes livres préférés. Ce n'est pas un livre français, cet auteur est brésilien, Paulo Coehlo, et on va lire son livre L'Alchimiste. C'est l'un de mes livres préférés et donc j'ai hâte de le partager avec vous. Let's read the blurb before we start. Santiago, un jeune berger andalou, part à la recherche d'un trésor enfoui au pied des pyramides. Lorsqu'il rencontre l'alchimiste dans le désert, celui-ci lui apprend à écouter son cœur, à lire les signes du destin et par-dessus tout, à aller au bout de son rêve. Merveilleux conte philosophique destiné à l'enfant qui sommeille en chaque être. Ce livre a déjà marqué une génération de lecteurs. So, Santiago, a young shepherd, goes on a hunt for a treasure buried at the feet of the pyramids. When he meets the alchemist in the desert, the alchemist teaches him to listen to his heart and to read the signs of destiny. To learn how to understand the signs that are given to him. But above all else, to go to the end of his dream, to achieve his dreams. Wonderful philosophical account destined or written for the child which sleeps in every being. The word sommeil is a lighter version of sleeping. So the verb to sleep in French is dormir, and that's when you're like really deeply asleep. But avoir le sommeil, or something like à l'enfant qui sommeille, the child who is being on the surface of sleep. Like if I was to say your name once, you'd wake up. You're like really on the surface of sleep. You're not asleep. So here it's saying that this book is destined for the child that is just surface level sleeping in every being. And this is one of the main reasons I love French, is because there are many words to say one thing, but they all slightly change the meaning of a sentence. Anyway, so each of these videos, I'm going to read 3 pages with you guys. It's really not much. The book is easy to read. I'll focus on any words that I think would be useful for a beginner or anything that comes to my attention. So we'll aim for 3 pages every day, but I'm going to stop like at a nice place with a full stop and everything. I'm not just going to end at a 3rd page like that. Some days we might read more, some days we'll just read 3, but let's start with that. Il se nommait Santiago. Le jour déclinait lorsqu'il arriva avec son troupeau devant une vieille église abandonnée. Le toit s'était écroulé depuis bien longtemps et un énorme sycomore avait grandi à l'emplacement où se trouvait autrefois la sacristie. Il décida de passer la nuit dans cet endroit. Il fit entrer toutes ses brebis par la porte en ruine et disposa quelques planches de façon à les empêcher de s'échapper au cours de la nuit. Il n'y avait pas de loup dans la région, mais, une fois, une bête s'était enfuie et il avait dû perdre toute la journée du lendemain à chercher la brebis égarée. Il étendit sa cape sur le sol et s'allongea, en se servant comme oreiller du livre qu'il venait de terminer. Avant de s'endormir, il pensa qu'il devrait maintenant lire des ouvrages plus volumineux. Il mettrait ainsi plus de temps à les finir et ce seraient des oreillers plus confortables pour la nuit. Il faisait encore sombre quand il s'éveilla. Il regarda au-dessus de lui et vit scintiller les étoiles au travers du toit, à moitié effondré. « J'aurais bien aimé dormir un peu plus longtemps, » pensa-t-il. Il avait fait le même rêve que la semaine précédente et, de nouveau, s'était réveillé avant la fin. Il se leva et but une gorgée de vin. Okay, let me explain a bit. So, his name was Santiago, and the night was like coming. Le jour déclina, meaning that it's literally, the day was declining. meaning that sunset was approaching. So sunset was approaching when he arrived with his herd of sheep in front of an old church, une vieille église abandonnée, an old abandoned church. The roof here, écroulé, means to have fallen for since a very long time. Yeah, it's been a long time since the roof of this old abandoned church has fallen. And since then, a huge sycamore tree has grown where la sacristie might be the chapel or a place in the church. So he decides he's going to spend the night there, and he gets his sheep he forms a kind of enclosure avec des planches so that they don't run away. He didn't do that because there were wolves in the region. Il n'y avait pas de loup dans la région, but one time, une bête, that's what they'll call like a sheep, like it's literally a creature, une bête, s'était enfui, had run away. And he lost one of his days having to look for that sheep, for this creature, une bête. Il étendit sa cape sur le sol et s'allongea. Il étendit is like he laid out his cape, let's say a type of rug, on the floor and laid down. And as a pillow, he used one of the books he had just finished reading. Before falling asleep, s'endormir, to fall asleep, he thought to himself that he should read books that are a bit more, they're a bit thicker, that, you know, qui sont un petit peu plus costauds, that have more content, a bigger book. Il mettrait ainsi plus de temps à les finir. If the books were bigger, he'd take more time finishing them. They'd be more pleasant cushions because they'd be thicker. J'aurais bien aimé dormir un peu plus longtemps, pensa-t-il. So he thought to himself, this must have been after he woke up, that he would have liked to sleep a little longer. He had had the same dream from last week and again had woken up before the end. He got up and drank a bit of wine. Une gorgée is, this is, la gorge is the throat. Une gorgée is one sip. Puis, il se saisit de sa houlette et se mit à réveiller les brebis qui dormaient encore. Il avait remarqué que la plupart des bêtes sortaient du sommeil sitôt que lui-même reprenait conscience. Comme si quelque mystérieuse énergie eût uni sa vie à celle des moutons qui, depuis 2 ans, parcouraient le pays avec lui, en quête de nourriture et d'eau. Ils se sont si bien habitués à moi qu'ils connaissent mes horaires, se dit-il à voix basse. Puis, après un instant de réflexion, il pensa que ce pouvait aussi bien être l'inverse. C'était lui qui avait habitué aux horaires des animaux. So, il avait remarqué, he noticed that most of his sheep would wake up, would come out of sleep, sortaient du sommeil to come out of sleep, sitôt, as soon as himself. So basically, him and his sheep would wake up at the same time. Comme si quelque mystérieuse énergie eût uni sa vie à celle des moutons. As if a mysterious energy had united his life to the life of the sheep. And he said, puis après un instant de réflexion, after a little reflection, these sheep that for 2 years have parcouru is to go around the country with him. En quête is in search of nourriture et d'eau. Food and water. Ils se sont si bien habitués à moi qu'ils connaissent mes horaires. They have habituated themselves, they're so used to me that they know my timetable, mes horaires. Yeah, my schedule. He said out loud in a small voice. And after a small time, un instant, really a small time of reflection, he thought that it could be actually the reverse. It was him that had become used to the schedule of his animals, the sheep. Il y avait cependant des brebis qui tardaient un peu plus à se relever. Il les réveilla une à une avec son bâton et en appelant chacune d'elles par son nom. Il avait toujours été persuadé que les brebis étaient capables de comprendre ce qu'il disait. Aussi leur lisait-il parfois certains passages des livres qu'il avait marqués, ou bien il leur parlait de la solitude ou de la joie de vivre d'un berger dans la campagne. Commenter les dernières nouveautés qu'il avait vues dans les villes par où il avait l'habitude de passer. Yes, he had sheep that would wake up at the same time as him, but he also had sheep that would wake up a bit later. But he knew the names of the sheep, of all his sheep, and he would call them by their individual names every day. And the ones that would wake up late, he'd wake them up with their name. Because he's always believed, il avait toujours été persuadé, to have always been, persuaded is not the right word, because persuadé is like a really strong sense of belief. Il avait toujours été persuadé que les brebis étaient capables de comprendre ce qu'il disait, that the sheep were able to understand what he was saying. So it was important that he knew their name. Sometimes he'd read them books that had left an impact on him, qui l'avaient marqué. Or he would talk to them about the solitude or the joy of living as a shepherd in the countryside, la campagne, the countryside. Commenter les dernières nouveautés qu'il avait vues dans les villes par où il avait l'habitude de passer. And he would comment on what was new in the cities that he was used to going through. Basically, he just talked to his sheep. He had no one else to talk to. Depuis l'avant-veille, pourtant, il n'avait pratiquement pas eu d'autre sujet de conversation que cette jeune fille qui habitait la ville où il allait arriver 4 jours plus tard. C'était la fille d'un commerçant. Il n'était venu là qu'une fois, l'année précédente. Le commerçant possédait un magasin de tissus et il aimait voir tondre les brebis sous ses yeux pour éviter toute tromperie sur la marchandise. Un ami lui avait indiqué le magasin et le berger y avait amené son troupeau. Okay, so he talks a lot to his sheep, but since the night before, and maybe even a day before that, all he's talked about to his sheep have literally been a girl that he's met in one of these towns that he's used to going around in. So he met her last year, and her father owns a shop where they sell fabric, un magasin de tissus, a fabric shop. And the owner of this shop will only buy fabric, or sheep fabric, wool, will only buy the fabric that has been sheared in front of him. So he wants someone to physically get him his fabric in front of him. Pour éviter toute tromperie sur la marchandise, to avoid anybody cheating him. He wants to make sure his product is authentic and real. So one of the friends of the shepherds lui avait indiqué, had shown him, had guided him this shop, had told him about this shop. And the shepherd went and he brought his herd of sheep. If there's anything that you don't understand, any words that pop out to you from anything that I'm reading, make a list of them, go research them on your own, or comment them down below and I will make a video going over these pages with the keywords that you guys give to me in the comments. A little bit more. J'ai besoin de vendre un peu de laine, dit-il au commerçant. La boutique était pleine et le commerçant demanda au berger d'attendre jusqu'en début de soirée. Celui-ci alla donc s'asseoir sur le trottoir du magasin et tira un livre de sa besace. Je ne savais pas que les bergers pouvaient lire des livres, dit une fois deux femmes à côté de lui. C'était une jeune fille qui avait le type même de la région d'Andalousie, avec ses longs cheveux noirs et des yeux qui rappelaient vaguement les anciens conquérants morts. C'est que les brebis enseignent plus de choses que les livres, répondit le jeune berger. Ils restèrent à bavarder plus de 2 heures durant. Elle dit qu'elle était la fille du commerçant et parla de la vie au village où chaque jour était semblable au précédent. Le berger raconta la campagne d'Andalousie, les dernières nouveautés qu'il avait vues dans les villes par où il était passé. Il était heureux de n'être pas obligé de toujours converser avec ses brebis. « Comment avez-vous appris à lire ?» vint à demander la jeune fille. « Comme tout le monde, répondit-il, à l'école. Mais alors, si vous savez lire, pourquoi n'êtes-vous donc qu'un berger ?» Le jeune homme se déroba pour n'avoir pas à répondre à cette question. Il était bien sûr que la jeune fille ne pourrait pas comprendre. Il continua à raconter ses histoires de voyage et les petits yeux mauresques s'ouvraient tout grands ou se refermaient sous l'effet de l'ébahissement et de la surprise. À mesure que le temps passait, le jeune homme se prit à souhaiter que ce jour ne finisse jamais, que le père de la jeune fille demeurât occupé longtemps encore et lui demanda d'attendre pendant 3 jours. Il se rendit compte qu'il ressentait quelque chose qu'il n'avait encore jamais éprouvé jusqu'alors, l'envie de se fixer pour toujours dans une même ville. Avec la fille aux cheveux noirs, les jours ne seraient jamais semblables. Mais le commerçant arriva, finalement, et lui demanda de tondre 4 brebis. Puis il paya ce qu'il devait et l'invita à revenir l'année suivante. So our shepherd goes to this merchant man with the fabric shop, and he tells him, I need to sell fabric. I need to sell wool, de la laine. The shop was really busy and the owner's like, okay, can you wait a little, wait somewhere and I'll deal with you when I have time. And so the guy's like, okay. So our shepherd here is recounting what happened the first time he met the girl that he's currently thinking about. Because currently he's with his herd somewhere, and in 4 days he's due to go back to that shop where that girl's father is working, owns that shop. So right now he's recounting us how he first met her. So he went to that shop last year and he told the man, I need to sell some wool, de la laine. The shop owner was like, that's great, but the shop was busy. So he was like, can we do this later? Can you just wait somewhere and I'll buy some fabric off you after? Shepherd's like, okay. He goes and sits outside of the shop and just waits there. And then he hears a woman speak to him. Oh yes. So he takes a book out of his bag and he starts reading. And then he hears a woman's voice saying, I didn't know shepherds could read. And here she's described as this beauty with long black hair, like typical of Andalusia. That's what is said here. And he says, oh, but sheep teach us more than the books do. They talked for 2 hours, so he had to wait quite a while to sell his wool. They were talking for 2 hours, and the girl asks him how he learned how to read, and he was like, well, like anyone at school. And then she asked him, but if you know how to read, why are you just a shepherd? And so he changes the subject of the conversation because he doesn't believe she'd understand his reasoning. So he continues to count her stories about his travels, and she's just listening really attentively, like, wow, really? Type of thing. They describe here, les petits yeux mauresques s'ouvraient tout grands ou se refermaient sous l'effet de l'ébahissement et de la surprise. So she was really attentive to his story. She was, wow, in awe. À mesure que le temps passait, as time was going more and more, le jeune homme se prit à souhaiter. So he was wishing that this time would never end, that this girl's father would just be busy for a very long time, like 3 days, so that he could just talk to his daughter the whole time. But then, le commerçant arriva. The shop owner arrived and asked him to share de tondre 4 sheep, 4 brebis. Then he paid the shepherd, and the shop owner told him to come next year. So, next year. So that's that. Our shepherd just told us how he met this girl that he's thinking about. But remember, he's still at that old church with his herd on his way back to that town. So this story that we've just heard of him and the woman happened last year. Now, as we read on in our next videos, we're going to see what happens as he goes back to that town, sees that shop owner again, and probably his daughter again. I don't want to ruin the story because I read it. But yeah, we'll see what happens next. But our shepherd is currently with his herd of sheep in this old abandoned church, and he's about to carry on his journey back to a town he's already been to the past year. And now we've fast forwarded to the following year. So yeah, I encourage you to get this book in the French edition of this book because it's a really sweet, short and easy to read story. And I'd love to help you guys. If you have any questions, you can send me a DM on Instagram or leave any comments Thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope to see you in our next French reading video where we'll be continuing this beautiful story.